Welcome to We Are Women Unapologetically, the podcast that talks about the good, bad, ugly, and awesome. Careers, life transitions, confidence, and everything in between. Because shift happens, but you don't have to do it alone.
Here's a statistic that might shock you. Only 23% of workers under the age of 42 plan to stay with their current employer long term. But here's what that statistic doesn't tell you. What about the rest of us? What about the women who've been in their company 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? We're not in that 23%. We are the ones that have built our identities around being loyal. We are the ones that have made ourselves indispensable. And somehow, along the way, we've made ourselves invisible too. Welcome back to We Are Women Unapologetically, the podcast where we dive deep into the truths that high-achieving women need to hear about, but rarely get permission to say out loud. I am your host, Jessica Cumming, and today we are having a conversation that might just change everything for you. The cost of staying too long, why loyalty isn't a career strategy. Now, before you think that I'm about to tell you to storm into your boss's office, throw your resignation letter on the desk, and walk out, breathe. This is about being honest about what staying too long has actually costed you, if anything. I was looking through season 1, and we hadn't talked about what happens if you decide to not make a choice, or if you don't know how to make a choice. Because here's what I've learned after coaching hundreds of successful women, and honestly, what I went through personally the hard way in my own career. Sometimes what you call loyalty is fear of wearing a very expensive pair of shoes. Let me paint a real picture for you that might feel uncomfortably familiar. You wake up on a Tuesday morning, and it could be any Tuesday morning, but you realize you cannot remember the last time you felt genuinely excited about going to work. Not just not dreading it, but actually excited. You've been the reliable one. You've been the one who stays late, covers when someone else drops the ball, makes it work when systems or processes are broken. You have built your reputation on being dependable. And honestly, you're proud of it. But somewhere along the way, that pride is starting to feel heavy. Here's what the research is telling us about it. 38% of employees experience high levels of stress in 2024, and that's up from 33% in 2023. And quite honestly, for women, more than 50% of women in leadership positions feel constantly burned out. Constantly. That is half of us. Here's what's really happening behind those numbers, though. It's not just about the workload, and that is a huge part of it, but it is something deeper. And it's what I call identity fusion. Identity fusion is when you cannot tell when your job ends and you actually begin. Your value as a person actually becomes inseparable from your value as an employee. When I am what I do becomes so deeply embedded that the thought of leaving feels like the thought of losing yourself. And quite honestly, right now for high achieving women, this is an epidemic. I was talking to a phenomenal woman last week. She's a VP and she's been at the same company for over 20 years now. She said that she didn't know who she was anymore if she wasn't the person that fixed everything for everyone. That is the cost of staying too long. It's not just time. It's not just missed opportunities. It's you. The you that existed before you became the dependable one. I was in a role for 6+ years when I was at Dell, and I was the one that would drop everything to help out last minute. I was the one who had the contacts, knew where to go. I was the one that got called on when things were broken. I would do whatever it took. In this particular instance, I was in one training session. My boss at the time knocked on the door, and she asked me if I would leave the following weekend and fly to Panama to train. And of course, I love to do those things. So I said, yes, I would. And I did. But I did it for the job. I did it for the loyalty. Now, I need to be clear about something. This is about shaming loyalty because loyalty is absolutely beautiful. Commitment is admirable But loyalty without boundaries, that is where it becomes self-abandonment. And self-abandonment is not a career strategy. Here's what nobody tells you about why smart, capable, accomplished women stay too long in situations that no longer serve them. We're talking about jobs, but if it resonates anywhere in your life, take it, run with it, apply what we're going to be talking about today. It's not because you're weak. It's not because you lack ambition. It's because you are human. And human beings are wired for certain psychological patterns that can work against us in our careers and in our lives. The first pattern is what psychologists call sunk cost fallacy. You have invested so much energy, reputation, relationships, that walking away feels like admitting it was all for nothing. But here's what you can do to reframe those thoughts. Those investments were not wasted. They have been preparation. Everything that you've learned, every relationship you've built, every skill you have developed, that comes from you. That stays with you. It travels with you. Your experience is not tied to your employee ID badge. The second pattern is what I call the gratitude trap. You feel like you should be grateful for what you have. And you should be, don't get me wrong. But growth and gratitude are not mutually exclusive. You can definitely be grateful for where you've been and where you are, but you can also be ready for where you're going. The third pattern is actually imposter syndrome in reverse. Instead of feeling like you don't belong where you are, you actually feel like you're never going to belong anywhere else. It's like your success is somehow tied to this one company, this one role, this one identity. Let me share something with you. Half of the women say that their stress levels are higher this year than they were a year ago. But the fascinating part about it is that only 6% of women feel comfortable that they can work flexibly without damaging their careers. Do you see the disconnect here? You're more stressed than ever, but you don't feel like you have options. You feel trapped by your own success. But what if I told you that feeling trapped is actually a sign that you have outgrown your current situation? What if that restlessness isn't a flaw to fix, but it's actually intelligence to trust? That role that I was in that I was telling you about, during that 6 years in that role, I did not get a promotion. I was traveling on weekends. I was working way more hours than I should have been. For me, that's when I truly knew that I was undervalued, underappreciated, and I had stayed too long. Once I came to that realization, I started looking for other jobs and found a new role, ironically, just a few weeks prior to that other team being disbanded. That role gave me multiple promotions over the years, more travel, more growth, more experience, and more visibility. So for me, if I hadn't done that, I would have never had those opportunities. And that is the real cost of staying too long. It's not just what you're missing out on. It's who you're not becoming. It's the woman you're meant to be who's patiently waiting for you to remember that you actually have a choice. Now I want to talk about, how do you really know? Like, how do you really, really know whether you're in the right place for the right reasons? And I call this the loyalty audit. And there's 3 simple questions that are going to cut through all the BS and noise in your head. And they're just fact-based questions. Are you ready? Here they are. Number 1, is it love? And by love, I mean, are you still energized by the work itself? When you think about your actual day-to-day responsibilities, not the politics of the office, not the difficult people, not the broken systems, but the work itself, does it light you up? Here's how you know. When you're doing your best work, do you lose track of time? Do you get excited about sharing what you're working on with others? And do you actually feel like you're still growing? If the answer is yes, then staying isn't just the loyalty, it's actually alignment. And alignment is always the right choice. But if the answer is no, if you're just going through the motions, if you're bored, if you feel like you could do it in your sleep, then you're not staying out of love. You are staying out of something else. Question 2, is it loyalty? Real loyalty is a choice that you make because you believe in something. Whether it's the commitment to the mission, people, or values that align with yours, you choose to stay. But here's what loyalty isn't. Loyalty is not staying because you feel guilty about leaving. It isn't staying because you're worried about letting people down. And it isn't staying because you've been there so long that leaving would actually make you feel like you're giving up. That is not loyalty. That's obligation. And obligation is a terrible foundation for career decisions. I should know. I was there. So here's the test. If you could wave your magic wand and transfer all of your work responsibilities to someone who could do them just as well as you, or maybe even better, would you feel relieved or devastated? If you would feel relieved, you're not staying out of loyalty, you are staying out of guilt. Number 3, is this fear? This is a huge one because most of us don't want to answer this honestly, but I am asking you to now. Are you staying because you're afraid that you will not find something better? Are you staying because you're worried about starting over? Are you staying because you don't think that you are qualified for something else? If you answered yes to any of those questions, I need you to hear this. Your fear is not evidence of your limitations. Your fear is evidence of your potential. Think about it. Why would you be afraid of not finding something better unless part of you believed that you actually deserved better? Why would you be afraid of starting over unless part of you is actually ready for something new? Fear isn't the opposite of readiness. Fear is the signal that you are ready for something bigger than what you currently have. Now, here's what I want you to do with your answers. I want you to write them down. Not think about them, actually write them down. And if you can't do it right now, make sure that you come back to this episode and write them down later. Because there is something powerful that happens when you not only speak your truth, but when you see it on paper. If you answered yes to love and you're energized by the work itself, then your job is simple. Stay and thrive. But set better boundaries. Negotiate better terms. But stay aligned with what you love. Don't run from that. If you answered yes to loyalty but not to love, then you need to have a conversation. The first conversation is with yourself, and then you need to have one with your employer. How can you shift your role to align what energizes you? How can you love your work again? But if you answered yes to fear, and if you're staying because you're scared out of what leaving might mean, then you're not staying. You are hiding, my dear, and you are too phenomenal to hide. Let me tell you something that might change this for you. Organizations with high employee engagement levels are 23% more profitable. They're 18% more productive and have a 21% lower turnover rate. So that tells me that people that are in the right place for the right reasons, everyone wins. The company wins, employees win, customers win. The work gets done. But when people stay out of fear or obligation, nobody wins. Not really. You're not bringing your full self. The company's not getting the full you, and the customers aren't getting the full you. Let me ask you this directly. What did your loyalty audit reveal? Because your answers to those questions, they are going to determine everything that we talk about next. Let's talk about cost. But we're not going to talk about costs in the way that you think, I promise. Most people, when they think about the cost of leaving the job, they think about money, salary, benefits, stock options, retirement funds, and absolutely all of those things matter. I know very well. But what is the cost of staying? What's the real price you're paying for that security? I want you to think about cost as an investment portfolio. You are investing in one stock, and that's your current situation. You are putting all of your time, all of your energy, and all of your growth potential into one basket. And what are we always told? Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Here's what I see when I work with women that have stayed too long. They become incredibly valuable to their current employer, but they've honestly stopped being valuable to themselves. They know their company systems, they know the processes inside and out, but they've stopped learning new ones. They've mastered their role, they've stopped growing beyond it. They have become the go-to person for everything except for their own dreams. That's a cost. That is a real, tangible cost. Let me give you some numbers that might surprise you. 53% of remote workers are now working more hours than they did when they were in the office. And 66% of millennials are facing moderate to high burnout. So let's calculate the real cost. The cost of staying isn't just what you're not earning elsewhere. It's who you are not becoming. It's the skills you're not developing, the relationships that you're not building, and the opportunities that you are not exploring. It is the version of yourself that's sitting in some parallel universe, rolling her eyes at the version of you that's still sitting in that same office, having the same conversations, solving the same problems for the 5th year in a row. Here's another cost that's even harder to measure, and I want to talk about it now. It is the cost to your sense of self, the cost to your confidence, to your belief that you can actually create something different. I talked to a woman last month who said she has been in the same role for 8 years. She used to have so many ideas about what she wanted to do with her career, and now she can't even remember what those ideas were. That is the cost of staying too long. It's not just time, it's dreams, possibility, the relationship you have with your own potential. That is the cost. Here's what I want you to know. Those dreams, they don't disappear. They are still there. They are buried. They are pushed to the back of your mind, but they are still there. They are buried under years of being practical, grateful, and responsible. And the woman that you were before you came the reliable one, she's still there too. She's actually waiting for you to remember that you have a choice. So when you are calculating the cost of leaving, make sure that you are actually also calculating the cost of staying. Because there is a price for security. And sometimes that price is the very thing that makes you feel secure in the first place. Your sense of who you are and what you're capable of. Let's talk about how do you look at making that decision? Not whether to stay or go, because it's going to be different for everyone. But I want to talk about how do you make a decision that you can actually live with? A decision that's based on clarity, but not fear. I'm going to give you the exact framework I used when I was wrestling with whether or not to leave corporate. And I have refined this framework working with other women who are facing similar crossroads, and I call it the future self test. So I want you to imagine yourself 5 years from now. You're sitting in your favorite coffee shop, in your office or your kitchen, wherever you do your best thinking and have some alone time. And I want you to imagine that everything has stayed exactly the same. You're in the same job, same responsibilities, same boss, same team, same problems, same solution, same morning routines, frustrations, and small victories. How does that woman, the future version of you, how does she feel about the choice that the present day you made to stay? Is she grateful? Is she resentful? Is she regretful? Really seriously sit with this, because your future self is going to have to live with the decisions that you're making today. Now imagine the other scenario. Imagine that you left. Imagine that you took the risk. You chose growth over security, possibility, or predictability. Maybe it worked out exactly how you hoped. Maybe it didn't. Maybe it worked out differently than you expected, but it still worked out. How does that future version of yourself feel? Here's what I've learned. Your future self will never resent you for taking calculated risks. She might be frustrated if they don't work out exactly how you wanted them to or planned, but she won't resent you. But she might resent you for not trying. She might resent you for choosing safety over growth, for staying small when you had the opportunity to grow, to shine. The second part of this framework is what I call the deathbed test. And I know it sounds dramatic, but stay with me. When you're 85 years old, looking back on your career, what are you going to wish you had done? What are you going to wish you would have tried? What risks are you going to wish you had taken? I promise you, you are not going to wish you had stayed longer in a job that drained you, or a relationship for that matter. You're not going to wish you had played it safer, and you are definitely not going to wish you had made yourself smaller. You're going to wish you would have been braver, trusted yourself more, and given yourself permission to want more. The third part of this framework is called the practical reality check, because future self and deathbed tests are great for clarity, but you still have to pay your mortgage next month, and I completely understand. But what would leaving actually look like? Not the fantasy version where everything goes perfectly, but the real version where you have to figure it out as you go. Do you have savings, a network, a plan, or at least the beginnings of a plan? Here's what you need to know. You do not have to have it all figured out before you leave, but you need to have enough figured out that you can sleep at night. The goal is not to eliminate all risks. The goal is to take smarter risks, calculated risks, risks that your future self will be proud of you for actually taking. Here is something that might surprise you. The biggest risk might be staying. It might be waking up 5 years from now exactly where you are today with 5 more years of life behind you and nothing to show for it but that paycheck. So run through this framework: future self test, deathbed test, practical reality check, and then think about what comes up. Do not rush it because this is super important, but also do not overthink it. At some point, analysis becomes paralysis, and at some point, you have to trust you are smart enough, capable enough, and resilient enough to figure it out as you go. Because I'm here to tell you, you are. All right, now I want to get practical because you have done the loyalty audit. You've run through the decision framework. You have some clarity about what you want to do, but now what? Because that all sounds great. Whether you decide to stay or go, there are specific steps that you need to take, and I'm going to walk through both paths because both are valid choices when they're made for the right reasons. So if you have decided to stay, first negotiate from a position of strength. You just did the work to clarify that you are choosing to be there, you are capable, you got this. That is a place of power. Use it. Schedule a conversation with your boss about your role, your growth, your compensation. Not from a place of desperation, but from a place of intention. You're not staying by default, you are staying by choice. Second is set boundaries. If you're staying on your terms. What needs to change in order for this to be sustainable? What needs to change not only for you to just survive, but to actually thrive? Third, invest in your own growth. No one is going to do it for you. Just because you are staying doesn't mean you're standing still. What skills do you want to develop? What relationships do you want to build? What impact do you want to make, not only for now, but in 5 years from now? If you've decided to leave, first, do it strategically. Do not quit in a moment of frustration. Plan your exit. Save money, build your network, get your resume updated, and apply for jobs while you still have one. Second, protect your reputation. You might be ready to leave, but you still have to leave on good terms. You never know when you might need a reference or when your paths might cross again. I will actually tell you a very personal story. I was told that I was being laid off, and I knew that I could just work from home the rest of my time there, but I chose not to. When I was asked to hand over all of the projects that I had been working on, there was a room, but there was a call-in number. I decided to show up. I decided to show up because I was not going to walk away without them seeing me holding my head high. And on that same day, I approached my senior VP. I told him I wanted to thank him and let him know how much I appreciated him, what he had invested in me, and the time that we had worked together. I did this because I don't know what will happen in the future. And there have been times where I have reached out and just checked in to let him know that I'm doing okay, but to also let him know that the lessons that I've learned from him, the things that I have learned, I have not forgotten. So never burn those bridges. Third is trust the process. Job searching is hard. In the climate that we're in today, the economy we're in, especially if you're in tech or Fed, it's hard. Transitions are hard. Starting over is hard. But you are not starting over. You are starting aligned with where you want to be and what you want to be doing. So regardless of which path you choose, there are some universal next steps that I suggest you take. Step 1, start having conversations with mentors, friends, thought leaders in your industry, with people who have made similar transitions. You need perspective that comes from outside your current situation. Step 2 is update your LinkedIn profile. Even if you're staying, you want to be findable. You want to be visible. You want to be positioned as someone who's growing, not someone who is just stuck in their current role. Step 3 is take care of yourself. This process, whether it's staying with intention or leaving strategically, is emotional work. Make sure you're eating well, sleeping enough, moving your body, talking to someone who can help you process this. Self-care is a baseline for where you need to be. Step 4, document your wins. Whether you're going to stay or you're going to go, you need to be clear about the value you bring. Start keeping track of your accomplishments, impacts, and your growth. You are going to need this information at some point, whether it be today, tomorrow, next week, next year. Step 5, trust yourself. You know more than you think you do. That little voice inside your head, that gut feeling, they know you are more capable than you give yourself credit for. You are more ready than you feel, and you're never going to feel 100% ready. So start doing the work now. And here's what I want you to remember. There's no perfect time to make a change. There's no moment where all of the stars align and your path is going to become absolutely crystal clear and all the risk disappears. But there are moments when you are going to get clear about what you want and brave enough to go after it. And if you're listening to this podcast, if you have made it this far into the conversation, then this might be your moment. You do not have to make a decision today, but you have to stop pretending that you don't have a choice. You have a choice. You've always had a choice. The question is, what are you going to choose? As we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with this thought. Your career is not something that happened to you. It's something you created. It is a series of choices that add up to a life. And every day that you show up somewhere that doesn't honor who you are and what you're capable of, you're making that choice. Maybe you've been making that choice out of fear. Maybe you've been making it out of obligation, or maybe it's because you forgot that you had other options. But now you know. Now you know the real cost of staying too long. You know the difference between loyalty and self-abandonment. You know how to audit your motivations and make decisions from a place of clarity instead of fear. So if this resonated with you, like, share, tag me in it. Let's start a conversation. What did you find out what it was costing you about staying too long, and what is the choice you're going to make? The woman you're meant to become is waiting to remember that you're not stuck. You're not trapped. You're not too old. You're not too anything. But time does not stop. You are exactly where you need to be to make the choice that will change everything. So here's your homework. Do the loyalty audit. Run through the decision framework. Have one conversation with someone who sees your potential more clearly than you can see it yourself. And then make a choice. Not the safe choice, not the expected choice, but the right choice for you. The choice that honors who you are and who you're becoming. Because you do not owe anyone your exhaustion. You don't have to earn your dreams. And you definitely do not have to stay small in order to make other people comfortable. Your time is now. Your voice matters. Your dreams are valid. And it's time to choose yourself. So if this resonated with you, like, share, tag a friend. Let's start a conversation. What are you going to choose? Until next time, stay fierce, stay bold, but most importantly, stay unapologetically you.